Hello, thank you for coming back to London Centuries. First time in a very long time. Posting my first video in absolutely ages on a totally freezing day in February. I really need to check that my legs still work. I needed to do a ride to get back into it, back into the saddle. And last year I'd done a few writers' rides at that George Orwell one and stuff like that. If you've seen that, it turned out quite well. If you haven't seen it, click on it, it'll be somewhere below. So for today, we're going to be looking at a work by Charles Dickens. I'm trying to find a cycling angle, obviously. His novel Tale of Two Cities, he wrote as a historical novel set against the events of the French Revolution, starting in 1789. He was writing half a century later, or more than that. So it's all set in both London and Paris. A lot of the scenes start off here. Oh, that's good timing. That used to be Temple Bar. It's now Fleet Street. But there's this place in the book, a bank, called Tellson's Bank. And the story involves various journeys from a branch of the bank in London to another branch the bank's got in Paris. And a lot of the characters make the journey at least once or several times. So I thought I'd do the same thing. So I thought I'd drop by a couple of the landmarks that from London that appear in the book. And here's the first of them here. See if you recognise that. It's the Old Bailey, main doors. There you go. Actually, I'll just wheel around, get another shot, because it's quite a nice old building. Central Criminal Court. There's an inscription above those pillars. Hang on, there's no traffic here, so I can pull in. Can you see that? Defend the children of the poor and punish the wrongdoer. Not sure if you can make those words out at home, but that's what it says over those pillars there. And actually that's quite relevant to the Dickens story, Tale of Two Cities. So maybe I'll come back to that in a bit, but for now, let's get riding. I've got a bike ride to do. The Old Bailey in Tale of Two Cities is where a character, Charles Darnay's, put on trial for his life because he's been accused of being a spy for the French. And the punishment, if you're caught being a spy and found guilty in those days, was being hung, drawn and quartered. So it's a pretty scary thing for him. But being one of the heroes of the book, he toughs it out, and in fact he gets off. But there's all sorts of plot twists about that and stuff. Having been tried for his life once by the English, later in the book, the same thing happens to him again by the French. And that's really dodgy. Yeah, because that time around he's facing the guillotine in revolutionary Paris. Hopefully I'll catch a few things about that on the ride. But before I really get riding, there's something else I want to see. As you saw, I just crossed the river, so I'm south of the river now. As you can probably tell from the street names. This is Dickens' part of the world. Just south of the river, there's lots of little old Victorian streets associated with Dickens. Because he spent quite a lot of time around here. Used to walk this way actually. That was Copperfield Street after David Copperfield. And this is Marshalsea Road. And we'll find out in a moment why that's associated with Dickens too. Yeah, here we go. I've just found a thing in the pavement. Difficult to read. John Dickens, the father of Charles Dickens, was imprisoned here for debt from February to May 1824. I've just jumped off the bike and I've come through the gates on the other side of the wall, so this would have been inside the prison. These days it's a little kind of park area. Oh, here we go, there's a plaque on the wall, Marshalsea Prison. Beyond this old wall is the site of the old Marshalsea Prison, closed in 1842. This sign is attached to a remnant of the prison wall. Charles Dickens, whose father had been imprisoned here for debt in 1824, used that experience as the Marshalsea setting for his novel, Little Dorrit. So when Dickens was 12 and his father was in prison, he had to go and earn the money to buy him out. And to do that, he worked in a factory north of the river, or on the north side of the Thames, sticking labels onto bottles of shoe polish. Can you look where you're going, please? And that experience of poverty never left him, even though he earned a lot of money later in his life from his writing. So that was all to do with Dickens, the real person, a little bit about his life, and I suppose the influence on his work as well. But going back to fiction and his Tale of Two Cities and this bike ride, I rode out through Blackheath, and I'm now going up Shooters Hill. And if you're a cyclist and you live in London, if you ride round here, you probably know Shooters Hill. And I'm guessing it's not your favourite way out of town. Yeah, me too. It's a pretty horrible road. It's always busy. It's a long old drag. But the reason I decided to take this route out of town is because it's the setting for quite a good scene at the beginning of Tale of Two Cities, where this character called Jarvis Lorry, he works for the bank that I mentioned, Tellson's Bank, and he has to go to the branch in Paris. And so he's in this horse-drawn coach and they're going up Shooters Hill, and the way it's written, it's just so horrible. It's a cold, misty night. All the passengers are terrified of being robbed on the road, attacked by highwaymen. The bloke driving the coach has got a pile of pistols and swords and muskets and stuff, because it's also dangerous and they're also frightened. And I gotta admit, when I read it, I thought about Dickens, and I thought, yeah, all right, I hand it to you. You know Shooters Hill. I hate it too. Not quite the same reasons, but the advantage of Shooters Hill, both for bikes and horse-drawn carriages, is that it's a dead straight line that points directly at Dover. And then to come this way through Rochester in Kent. It's really cold. I left London in the afternoon and now it's getting dark. It's Canterbury now. It's cold and dark here. Well, as predicted, London Centuries has lost a lot of fitness. It's going really slowly on this night ride to Dover. 11:30 and I'm boarding on the ferry. Okay, so it's now 2:30 in the morning and I'm about to be in France. Okay, getting off the ferry and not feeling too fresh at the moment. Just got to follow a van somewhere. I'm in Calais. Town centre's very quiet. Not surprising given the time of night. Look, I'm going to put the camera away for a little bit. I'm going to trundle on towards Amiens. Well, hopefully it'll be getting light by then in about 6 hours time. On the track to Paris. See you in a little bit, yeah? That was a long night. Long and incredibly cold. So at last I'm coming into Amiens, and I wanted to come here to see the cathedral. It's the largest cathedral in all of France. Look at that! Whoa! This is, apparently you could fit the Notre Dame of Paris inside twice. I've got to take a picture. Look, this has got absolutely nothing to do with Charles Dickens or Tale of Two Cities, but I really wanted to come here. Paris gone proper. Yeah, this is Paris. Paris in the spring. Just gonna get over here. And while I'm poking around Paris and the sun's out and it's all looking lovely, I want to tick off another Tale of Two Cities site. So I'm just crossing back over the river again, and I want to go to Place de la Bastille, the place where the infamous Bastille prison once stood. There's a very vivid scene in the book where they storm it when the revolution really gets underway. Here we go. The Bastille Monument, and its storming became emblematic of the revolution. What I didn't realise was that when they stormed it, it only held 7 prisoners, and they tore it down. But this is where it stood. Now, having done that little bit of sightseeing and finding places connected with Tale of Two Cities, I'm going to knock it on the head because it's taken me all day to get here. I've got an Airbnb, and I'm going to give myself a day off tomorrow to enjoy a bit of Paris. Then I'm going to ride home the day after and do more video and Dickens stuff then. So see you in a bit. Well, so that was the Place de la Bastille and some of the streets around Saint-Antoine, where a lot of the action of A Tale of Two Cities is set. But now, as you can see, it's very early morning and I'm off again. So I'm heading out of town, going to the west of Paris, because I wanted to come out here. Out here to the Chateau of Versailles. But as you can see, you can't see anything because it's dark. Because I got up too early. Royal seat of last King of France, King Louis XVI, who, when they chopped his head off with the guillotine in the Revolution, it brought to an end 1,000 continuous years of French monarchy. So the events of the revolution must have been deeply shocking over the channel in England, because you start chopping heads off kings, people are going to get the jitters. England had done that a century and a half before with Charles I. It took him ages to get over it. So maybe it's hardly surprising that when Dickens did Tale of Two Cities, both sides, you know, the French aristocracy and the revolutionaries, kind of come out equally badly. They're all absolutely awful. So Dickens starts his book with the lines, "It was the best of times, it was the worst of times." Rather fitting, don't you think, for our difficult days at the moment. When I'm recording this video, we're still in the first few weeks of the Trump presidency in the US. It's been a bumpy ride so far for Europe, just like everybody expected. We're wealthier than we've ever been, better technology than we've ever had before. I don't think I know anyone who's optimistic. Strange days, really strange. I think there's something wrong with their bridge. So it was the best of times and it was the worst of times. Strange times. Oh, hang on. Where have I got to go here? Straight over, I think. Yeah. Now, going back to the French aristocrats and the revolutionaries. Nice big house up there on the hill, isn't it? Talking about aristocrats. Very nice. Remember that guy I mentioned earlier on in London, Charles Darnay? Charles Darnay goes over to France from England to meet his uncle, who's a proper aristocrat. And we see the uncle, known as Le Monseigneur, and he's driving his carriage fast through the streets of Paris. He's an absolute evil man, and he crushes and kills a little child with his carriage, and stops his carriage when he realizes what's happened, and throws a gold coin at the child's father. And as the carriage takes off again, the coin's thrown back at him. Charles then meets the uncle later on that day at the uncle's chateau, where Charles tells him that he's renouncing his birthright and he's not going to inherit all the money from the nobility because he's a goodie. The uncle's furious, obviously. He gets his comeuppance before the end in a bit of natural justice. But Dickens doesn't miss out on opportunities to show us the wickedness of the pre-revolutionary French system, how cruel it was. There's a very vivid scene early on in the novel, actually, where he paints a picture of the poverty that most Parisians were living in at the time. There's this cart going along a street and it's going towards a wine shop, and it's got these barrels of wine on the back. One of the barrels falls onto the ground and breaks, bursts open like a broken walnut, he says. And all of a sudden, a crowd descends on this red wine that's running in between the cobblestones and the mud in the ground, and they're lapping it up with their tongues and cupping it up with their hands and trying to drink it. And women are dipping their handkerchiefs in it and squeezing it into babies' mouths. It's totally disgusting and extremely vivid. And all these people trying to get this wine, they get it around their mouths and on their faces, and their mouths are stained red by this wine. And then someone in the crowd dips his hand into the wine or the mud. It's kind of red mud by this point, and turns to the wall, and with his hand writes the word blood in this red mud on the wall as a portender of the revolution and the violence to come. And you really get a sense of his sensitivity to poverty and his hatred of the unfairness of the whole awful system. I guess going back to his own childhood and what he saw and lived himself, like I said earlier. And in fact, the wine shop where the barrel burst outside turns out to be an important location in the novel, because the shop owners, Monsieur and Madame Defarge, they turn out to be secret revolutionaries, but they're not too good either. Later on, we see Madame sitting doing her knitting next to the guillotine. So callous. You know, real life, I think they executed 17,000 people. Very bloodthirsty. Just realised I haven't said where I am today. I'm staying west of Paris and going northwest up to Le Havre and get a ferry over to Portsmouth from there. So my whole route, once I'm done, should look a bit like a diamond. London to Dover, Calais to Paris, Paris to Le Havre, Portsmouth to London. This is a beautiful road. It's going along a valley, a little river valley. Oh yeah. River's called the Risle, R-I-S-L-E. Oh, there it is, you can see it. Sun's come out at last. Actually, a quick travel tip: if you're going to Paris from London on a bike, the route via Le Havre is much nicer than the route via Calais, but, or at least the top bit, the northern section. But the ferry to Calais is much cheaper, so you take your pick, I guess. It's quite good around here. I'm just over 30k outside of Le Havre, and there in the distance, if you can see it, is the bridge taking the traffic over the estuary into Le Havre. Whoa! Looks like I'm in the right kind of place, doesn't it?
C'est le signal sonore pour appeler tous les passagers à se rendre vers leur point de rassemblement. Vous entendrez ensuite la voix du capitaine. Veuillez écouter attentivement.
Oh well, we're back to lovely old Britain, aren't we? So, there was a ferry trip, and now I'm in Portsmouth. And best of British weather and all of that. And this apparently is a bike path leading into Portsmouth City or something. Got to try and figure out some navigation. So for the final leg of this Charles Dickens, A Tale of Two Cities ride from London to Paris and back, I thought I'd come home through the South Downs, and I'm heading for Petworth at the moment, where I hope to be able to get something to eat for breakfast, because I haven't eaten since I was in Le Havre last night in France. I'm hungry. So back to Britain again, eh? The difference in the weather is astounding. France was freezing cold, incredibly cold, but the air was dry. You get back here, I had to shed several layers, I'm sweating, and it's so damp and misty. So it's Petworth, here we come. For breakfast, here we come. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. I said that I damaged my right shifter cable. I took it out in Paris. It's perfectly alright, absolutely nothing wrong with it at all. So, in fact, it's the shifter itself that's gone. It's shifting onto the smaller cogs, but not onto the bigger ones. So I guess I'll have to replace that when I get home. A bit expensive. Petworth came up with the goods. Good coffee as well. And now it's pushing on into the Surrey Hills. Once I'm over those, won't be far, and I'll be on the outskirts of South London. So here we are. I've been snaking my way up through the suburbs of South London, getting much closer to the home turf of Charles Dickens now, which makes me think of a good place to go to finish this Charles Dickens themed ride. See if you can guess where I'm going to be in a moment. I'm just going to pull in here. This was Dickens' house. So that's Dickens' house behind me. Good place to end my bike ride to Paris and back for a tale of two cities. I'm off home now to have a hot shower and to do a lot of eating. Quite tired. But I think I got some good early season miles in my legs, and I will be back with more videos. Hopefully some fairly exciting ones this year actually. Got some quite good plans. So thank you very much for watching. Stay tuned to London Centuries. Take it easy, happy riding.